Despite the United Kingdom's global fame, far too many people still believe some pretty big misconceptions and lies about London, as well as the usual stereotypes about British people. Some of them were true decades ago, some are simply misunderstandings, and others just seem to be total rumors, as false now as they ever were. So we've gathered 10 lies you were taught about the UK, and turned them into a list of the top 10 fun and amazing facts about the United Kingdom. Forget about the myths and lies you believe about Britain, and enjoy these interesting facts. Number 10. The Queen's Guards. When one thinks of London, or even England, the image of a tall, lonely sentry in bearskin and red coat, standing in a sentry box outside Buckingham Palace, comes to mind. These sentries are real soldiers from the British Army, from one of the 5 regiments of Foot Guards: Grenadier Guards, Coldstream Guards, Welsh Guards, Irish Guards and Scots Guards. It just so happens that half of their job is ceremonial, and the other half is infantry. Such is the nature of their job that one week they maybe stood idly outside one of the Queen's palaces, doing Queen's Guard, and the next, fighting the Taliban in Afghanistan. The sentries are not just there for decoration, they do perform real army duties, and when they guard to defend, not just to decorate. Number 9. Unfriendly People. Ask people around the world what British people are like, and you'll get a pretty similar response. They're quiet, they're reserved, they're unfriendly, and so on. In reality, people in the UK aren't any more unfriendly than anyone else in the world. A test performed on London streets showed that, when faced with an old lady who needed help with her bag, or a woman who had her groceries knocked out of her hands, nearby people were quick to intervene and offer assistance. So no, it's not that people in the UK are unfriendly, but they are in a rush most of the time. People who are out in the day are usually going somewhere in a hurry. This might mean they forget to say sorry as they push past you in the station, but meet them after work hours and they'll be totally different.
Hey mate, wake up. We're at Clapham Junction.
Wake me up before you go. Leave me hanging on like a yo-yo. Take me dancing tonight.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4. He's so lovely. He's so lovely. He's so lovely. He's so lovely.
Thank you so much.
Number 8. Bad food. Modern-day London is a thoroughly global city. There are thousands of restaurants, from cheap takeouts to Michelin-star restaurants, covering practically every culinary tradition you can think of. But to find London's best food, you'll have to take to the street. London has a centuries-long history of innovative street food that dates all the way back to medieval times. Back then, most of the city's laborers would go to a bakery on their break, where they would find everything from donuts to meat pies. Today, London's street food is some of the best in the world, heavily influenced by the city's diverse population. Number 7. Cramped and Dirty. In 1952, the Great Smog descended on London, killing thousands. It was the worst air pollution event in British history, and news of it spread across the world. It led to new government regulations, and a plan to cut the city's pollution levels, but the city's reputation was permanently damaged. To the rest of the world, London was known as a dirty, old-fashioned Victorian city, struggling to meet modern standards of cleanliness. This reputation persists today, though it is entirely untrue. While studies have shown that London's air still affects people's health, it is relatively clean by modern standards. In fact, London doesn't even make it into the World Health Organization's list of the top 500 most polluted cities. In short, visitors into the city have nothing to worry about when it comes to air quality. Perhaps more shockingly, London is one of the greenest cities on Earth by area. 47% of the city is green-spaced, so almost half is covered by parks, woodland, and other open areas. Enough for some people to say that the Greater London area should be turned into a national park. Number 6. Free universal healthcare. The good old NHS, National Health Service. Sadly, as is commonly unknown to people outside of the UK, the NHS is not free, nor will it cover any illness or injury. The NHS is paid for through taxes and donations, and will only provide certain approved services or treatments. While it is true that emergency treatment is almost always free of charge, treatment for long-term illness or injury is almost always charged. Certain drugs will be provided for certain illnesses, but if your illness or the drugs and treatment you require is not on the approved list, you will not get it from the NHS. This is always a controversial issue in the United Kingdom. The NHS is also not available to non-British citizens, except in the case of emergency. Even then, the emergency must have taken place within the UK. Number 5. It's expensive. England is expensive. It is actually one of the most expensive cities in the world, if you want to live there. Rent for an average 3-bedroom apartment in central London stretches above £5,000, $6,450, way outside the pay range of most adults. The rumours of London's high prices put many people off, but it is possible to enjoy London on a small budget. You can have a day out in London and hardly spend any money. Most of London's world-leading museums are free to enter, as are its fantastic art galleries and parks. And the places which do charge admission aren't too expensive. A ticket to visit Kew Gardens, the world-leading botanic garden, is just £12.50, $16.50. There are thousands of pubs and restaurants in the capital which aren't any more expensive than they are in the rest of the UK. If you're willing to take a risk, you can find food for mega cheap. Ask around, and the locals will quickly tell you the best places. Just don't expect to find much budget food in Kensington or Chelsea. Number 4. Brits have the worst teeth. The idea that Brits have terrifyingly bad teeth powers roughly 100% of all comic depictions of UK culture. Know who should be the butt of all those awful teeth jokes? Poland. An OECD report on the number of decayed, missing, or filled teeth in the average child of each nation found that Polish kids had the absolute worst teeth in the entire world. So where was Britain? Second? Nope. The same report also concluded that British teeth are better than anyone else's, including Americans. According to the OECD's figures, the UK's dental hygiene is second to none. Only Germany came close in having similarly healthy teeth, while countries like South Korea, Japan, and Spain were way off. Admittedly, the report did mention that healthiest didn't necessarily mean straightest or whitest, but it did mean best real dental health. That's not to say the stereotype doesn't have some basis in fact. In 1963, the average British child was missing a shocking 5.6 teeth, and in 1978, over 1/3 of all adults living in Wales had no natural teeth left. Fast forward to the present though, and it looks like it's time to retire this stereotype. Number 3. The Underground is the only way to travel. The London Underground, also known as the Tube, is one of London's most famous landmarks. It was first opened in the 1860s, making it the oldest underground passenger railway in the world. And with millions of people using it every single day, it is also one of the world's busiest. On the other hand, London is not built on a grid, unlike many more modern cities. When the city burned down in 1666, it was actually rebuilt following the old road system, meaning that some streets in the city are hundreds of years old. This means the city is not optimized for traffic. Driving through by car can be torture. With this in mind, it's easy to see why many people think the tube is the only way to travel around London, but there are a wide range of other options. Take London's famous red buses for instance. They carry millions of people across the city every day, more than any other bus network in Europe. There's also the famous black cab service, whose drivers have to take a tough training course called the Knowledge, which teaches the layout of London. If you prefer to get around on your own though, your best bet are the Santander cycles. Affectionately known as Boris bikes, you can ride one of these bikes from one of the hundreds of stations across the city to any other station, for just £3. Number 2. It's always wet and cold. Most of the UK is well known for its grey weather and rainy days. Now, no one's going to say the United Kingdom is a warm country. Winter in Scotland and North England can be very harsh, and summer is often dominated by cloudy days. But London is in the south, and the temperatures there are much warmer. London is slightly colder than New York on average, but it still remains way above freezing through most of the winter months. And contrary to popular belief, London is nowhere near as rainy as you might imagine. It averages around 23 inches of rain a year, almost half as much as New York. Precipitation is low through the winter, too. Snow is so rare in London that, in the UK, if it snows on Christmas Day in the capital, it's known as a white Christmas. We're not saying you should pack just a shirt and shorts for your London visit, but nor will it be as dreary and wet as you expect. In the summer, you might even see a blue sky. Number 1. Coffee and tea. Let's end with one of the most repeated lies you were taught about the UK, that puts a lot of American visitors off. The myth that good coffee is impossible to find in London. This one may have been true a couple of decades ago, but the London coffee scene is much more impressive now than it was in 2000. Major coffee chains like Starbucks, Cafe Nero, and Costa Coffee can be found on almost every street corner, just like in any other major global city. In fact, both Europe's largest coffee chain, Cafe Nero, and the world's second biggest chain, Costa, have their headquarters in London. And no, British people don't drink excessive amounts of tea. There are many ways of looking at which regions drink the most tea, but whichever way you look at it, Britain is not the biggest tea-drinking region by a long way. Taking population into account, Britain ranks somewhere around third, falling well behind Turkey and India. When a British person invites you around for tea, they are inviting you for a meal, not to just sit and drink tea, which is how some people imagine the situation. This is also true of the Commonwealth nations, where come for tea usually means come for the main evening meal. Check out our other videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.